In the dim glow of his apartment, Aaron sat at his cluttered desk, staring at the blank page of his notebook. Outside, the city hummed with life, but Aaron's mind was a void, drained by years of routine and loneliness. He longed for something, anything, to ignite his spirit. Little did he know his wish was about to be answered in the most unexpected way. A sudden chill swept through the room, extinguishing the warmth of his small space. Aaron turned toward the source and froze. Standing by the window was a figure cloaked in shadows, her silhouette outlined by a faint, otherworldly glow. Her eyes glimmered like liquid gold, and her presence radiated an energy that was both alluring and terrifying. "Who are you?" Harris stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. The figure stepped forward, revealing a woman of unearthly beauty. Her deep crimson hair cascaded down her shoulders, and small, delicate horns peeked out from beneath the waves. She was clad in an elegant dress that shimmered like the night sky, and her smile was equal parts mischief and charm. "I am Lilith," she purred, her voice smooth as silk. "A succubus, if you will. But worry not, I come with no ill intent. I was drawn here by your longing, a cry for something beyond the mundane." Aaron's heart pounded as he grappled with the absurdity of the situation. A succubus? Like a demon. Why me? Lilith laughed, a sound that seemed to vibrate in the air around them. "You're special, Aaron. Though you may not see it, your soul burns brighter than most. I am here to offer you 3 gifts." "3 gifts?" Aaron echoed, his skepticism warring with a flicker of curiosity. "Why would you do that?" Lilith's expression softened, her gaze steady. "Consider it a chance to change your fate. 3 requests. Anything your heart desires." Aaron hesitated, his thoughts racing. This had to be a dream, yet the weight of her presence felt undeniably real. "Anything?" She nodded. "Anything." And so, despite his better judgment, Aaron made his first request. Aaron leaned back in his chair, his mind racing with possibilities. He could ask for wealth, power, or knowledge, but as he stared into Lilith's golden eyes, an idea struck him, a bold, impulsive idea that made his cheeks flush. I want to know more about you," he said, his voice tinged with both nervousness and sincerity. Lilith blinked, momentarily taken aback. "You want to know about me?" "And what does that have to do with me?" Aaron nodded, his gaze unwavering despite the heat rising in his face. "If you're offering gifts, it's only fair I understand who's giving them. Where do you come from? Why do you do this? And are you happy?" For the first time, Lilith's confident demeanor faltered. A faint blush colored her cheeks, and she averted her gaze. "No one has ever asked me that," she admitted softly. "Most humans only care about their desires." Aaron shrugged, trying to appear nonchalant despite his racing heart. "Well, I guess I'm not like most humans." Lilith's eyes met his, and for a moment the air between them felt charged with an unspoken understanding. "Very well," she said, her voice quieter now. "I will honor your wish." She took a seat across from him, her ethereal glow dimming slightly, as if she were shedding a layer of her mystique. "I am from a realm beyond this one. A place where emotions and desires manifest as reality. My kind exists to feed on human energy, but it is not as sinister as you might think. We give as much as we take." Aaron listened intently, captivated by her words. "But do you enjoy it?" Lilith hesitated, her expression thoughtful. "At times, but it can be lonely. To be seen as nothing more than a vessel for others' desires, it wears on the soul." Erin's chest tightened at her confession. "I'm sorry," he said, the sincerity in his voice catching her off guard. She smiled faintly, her blush deepening. "You're a curious one, Erin. Perhaps this encounter will be more interesting than I expected." The night unfolded with tales exchanged between the unlikely pair. Erin shared snippets of his mundane life, his dreams of becoming a writer, and his struggles with loneliness. In return, Lilith painted vivid pictures of her realm, a world brimming with vibrant landscapes and emotions given form. "It sounds beautiful," Erin said, leaning forward, his eyes alight with wonder. "But also overwhelming." Lilith nodded. "It is both. The highs are intoxicating, but the lows can be crushing. Humans think we are invincible, but we feel just as deeply as you do." Erin frowned. "Then why do you do it? Why grant wishes?" "Because," Lilith said, her gaze distant, "it is our nature, and sometimes, amidst the chaos, we find moments of genuine connection." Her words lingered in the air, and Erin felt a pang of empathy for the enigmatic being before him. "Well," he said, mustering a small smile, "I'm glad you're here, even if it's just for tonight." Lilith looked at him, her golden eyes shimmering with an emotion he couldn't quite place. "Perhaps," she said softly, "there is more to this night than either of us anticipated." As the hours slipped by, Erin felt the walls around his heart begin to crumble, and though he had 2 more wishes to make, he couldn't shake the feeling that this connection, fleeting as it might be, was the greatest gift of all. Barissa's eyes closed, and she lay back on her pillow. Lilith leaned back in her chair, the faint glow of her presence casting soft shadows against the walls of Erin's apartment. She studied him with a thoughtful expression, as though trying to piece together a puzzle she hadn't expected to encounter. "You intrigue me, Erin. I've granted countless wishes, yet rarely have I encountered someone who values understanding over ambition." Erin flushed under her gaze, but he met her eyes with a shy smile. "I guess I just don't see the point in asking for things if I don't know who I'm sharing this moment with. You're offering to change my life, but I think knowing you might change it even more." Her lips curved into a smile that was almost wistful. Such a peculiar man," she murmured. "But perhaps that's why I was drawn to you. Most humans are blinded by their desires, their greed. They rarely stop to look beyond the surface. This is great." Erin tilted his head, curiosity gleaming in his eyes. "Is that what you wanted? For someone to look past the surface?" Lilith's smile faltered for a brief moment, and she looked away, her golden eyes dimming slightly. "Perhaps," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "Even creatures like me have desires, though we rarely speak of them. To be seen for what we are, not what we can give. It is a rare gift indeed." Erin's heart ached at her vulnerability, and he felt a surge of courage. "Then consider this my gift to you," he said softly. "For tonight, I'll see you not as a succubus or a giver of wishes, but as Lilith." Her eyes widened, and for a moment the ethereal glow around her flickered like a flame caught in a gust of wind. You truly mean that?" she murmured. Her eyes closed. Don't..." He nodded, his sincerity shining through. "I do." Silence enveloped the room, thick with an unspoken understanding that seemed to bridge the gap between their worlds. Lilith's gaze softened, and she leaned forward, resting her hands on the table. "You have a kind heart, Erin. Perhaps kinder than any I've encountered in centuries." He chuckled nervously, scratching the back of his head. "I'm not sure about that. I'm just a guy trying to make sense of all this. And yet, you've given me something I didn't realize I needed, she said, her voice tinged with gratitude. For that, I am in your debt. Aaron raised an eyebrow, a teasing smile playing on his lips. Does that mean I get a bonus wish? Lilith laughed, the sound light and melodic. Perhaps, but for now, let us savor this moment. As the night wore on, their conversation deepened, weaving threads of connection that seemed to defy the boundaries of their respective worlds. Lilith spoke of her realm with a wistful longing, describing its beauty and its challenges in vivid detail. Aaron, in turn, shared his dreams of becoming a writer, of creating worlds through words that might inspire others as much as they had inspired him. You have a gift, Lilith said, her tone earnest. Your words carry weight, even in conversation. Perhaps that is why your soul shines so brightly. He patted her arm softly, pleased to find so comforting she felt relief. Aaron blushed, averting his gaze. I'm not sure about that. Most of the time, I feel like I'm just fumbling through life. And yet, even in your uncertainty, you have touched my heart, she replied, her golden eyes holding his. Do not underestimate the power of your sincerity. The intensity of her gaze made Aaron's breath catch, and he felt an unfamiliar warmth spreading through his chest. He couldn't help but wonder if this connection, fragile and fleeting as it seemed, might be the beginning of something extraordinary. By the time dawn began to break, the world outside slowly brightening with the promise of a new day, Aaron and Lilith found themselves sitting in comfortable silence. The air between them was no longer heavy with formality, but filled with a sense of camaraderie that felt as natural as it was unexpected. Thank you, Lilith said finally, her voice soft. For seeing me, Aaron. For reminding me that even in the most unlikely of places, there is hope. He smiled, his heart swelling with a mixture of pride and tenderness. You're welcome, Lilith. And thank you for showing me that magic still exists, even in the darkest corners of the world. How are you? As the first rays of sunlight crept through the window, Lilith began to fade, her form shimmering like a mirage. Our time is not yet over, she said, her voice echoing faintly. 2 wishes remain, Aaron. Use them wisely. And with that, she was gone, leaving behind a warmth that lingered in the air and a notebook filled with half-formed ideas that now seemed brimming with potential. Aaron stared at the space where she had been, a sense of wonder and determination taking root in his heart. He didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. His life would never be the same again. Aaron found himself drawn to the mysterious succubus named Lilith in ways he could neither explain nor resist. Her presence lingered in his mind long after she had vanished from his apartment that first night. He had used his first wish to ask about her, a decision that had surprised even himself. Yet, as the days passed, he couldn't help but reflect on the depth of their conversation. Lilith was more than a mythic being. She was complex, enigmatic, and burdened by a loneliness that mirrored his own. 1 week after their initial meeting, Aaron was sitting at his desk again, staring at the pages of his notebook. His writing had flowed more easily since that night. The words seemed to come alive, vivid and unrestrained, as though the stories he longed to tell were finally within reach. But no matter how much he wrote, his thoughts always circled back to Lilith. Would she return? Had she been serious about granting him 2 more wishes? Just as he let out a frustrated sigh, a familiar chill swept through the room. Aaron turned quickly, and there she was, standing by the window. Her crimson hair shimmered in the moonlight, and her golden eyes seemed to pierce straight through him. She looked more radiant than he remembered, yet there was a subtle vulnerability in her expression. You came back, he said, his voice tinged with both relief and nervousness. Lilith stepped closer, her movements graceful yet hesitant. "I always intended to return. I promised you 3 wishes, after all." She gestured to the hole in the wall further down the hallway, to something at the edge. Aaron smiled, gesturing for her to take his seat. "I wasn't sure if I'd see you again." She sat across from him, her gaze steady but thoughtful. "It's rare for someone to linger in my thoughts, Aaron. You are different." "I know that," she said. "Zephod." He chuckled softly. "I'll take that as a compliment." Lilith's lips curved into a faint smile. It was meant as one. "Have you thought about your second wish?" Aaron hesitated, his mind swirling with possibilities. He could wish for wealth, for fame, for the ability to write stories that would captivate the world. But as he looked at Lilith, he realized that none of those things mattered in this moment. What he truly wanted was to understand her better, to uncover the layers of her existence that she so carefully guarded. "I want to see your world," he said finally, the words spilling out before he could second-guess himself. Lilith's eyes widened in surprise. "My world?" Aaron nodded, his heart pounding. "You've described it, but I want to experience it for myself. Show me where you come from." For a long moment, Lilith was silent, her expression unreadable. Then she let out a soft sigh. "Ah, that is a dangerous wish, Aaron. My realm is not like yours. It is a place of extremes, where emotions and desires take on forms you cannot imagine." "I'm willing to take the risk," he said firmly. "If it means understanding you better, then it's worth it." Lilith studied him, her golden eyes searching for something she couldn't quite name. Finally, she nodded. "Very well, but you must promise to stay close to me. My realm is not kind to outsiders." "And you might rest assured, your wife doesn't turn you into a cold one." Aaron agreed, and without another word, Lilith rose from her seat. She extended her hand, and he took it, feeling a warmth that contrasted sharply with the chill that always accompanied her arrival. The room around them seemed to blur, the edges dissolving into streaks of light and shadow. Aaron felt a strange sensation, as though he were being pulled through an endless tunnel of color and sound. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it stopped. They stood in a world that defied all logic. The sky was a swirling canvas of iridescent hues, constantly shifting and changing. The ground beneath their feet was soft and pliable, like walking on a living cloud. Towering structures rose in the distance, their shapes fluid and ever-changing, as though they were alive. The air was thick with a scent of something sweet and unnameable, and the faint hum of an otherworldly melody echoed all around them. Aaron looked around in awe, his senses overwhelmed by the sheer beauty and strangeness of it all. "This is incredible," he whispered. Lilith stood beside him, her expression both proud and wary. "This is my realm, Aaron, a place where emotions shape reality. Be careful what you feel here. Your thoughts and desires can manifest in ways you might not expect." Reese tried to resist. He hadn't been fully on his guard, but he gradually lost control over his desires. Every ounce of force in his body was under threat. He nodded, trying to steady his racing thoughts. "How do you navigate a place like this?" "With caution," she replied, "and with purpose. Come, I will show you more." They walked together through the surreal landscape, Lilith guiding him with a steady hand. As they moved, Aaron noticed that the environment seemed to respond to her presence. The ground became more solid, the colors less chaotic, as though the realm itself recognized her authority. He couldn't help but marvel at her poise and confidence, even in a world as unpredictable as this. "Do you miss it when you're in the human world?" he asked. Lilith hesitated before answering. Sometimes. But this place can be overwhelming. The emotions here are amplified and they can be difficult to control. In the human world, things are simpler. Aaron glanced at her, noting the hint of sadness in her voice. Do you ever feel like you don't belong in either place? She looked at him sharply, her golden eyes narrowing. How did you know? He shrugged, a small smile playing on his lips. Just a hunch. You seem like someone who's always caught between two worlds. Lilith's expression softened, and she looked away. You're more perceptive than most, Aaron. It's both a blessing and a curse. They continued walking, and Aaron found himself drawn to the strange and wondrous sights around them. Creatures of pure light and shadow flitted through the air, their forms shifting constantly. Rivers of liquid silver flowed through valleys of crystalline trees, their branches shimmering with an inner light. It was a place of endless beauty and mystery, yet Aaron couldn't shake the feeling that there was an undercurrent of sadness beneath it all. Why did you agree to bring me here? He asked suddenly. Lilith stopped walking and turned to face him. Because you asked, she said simply, and because I wanted you to see me. All of me. Her words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Aaron took a step closer, his heart pounding. I'm glad you did, he said softly. This place is amazing, but it's you who makes it truly special. Lilith's eyes widened, and for a moment she looked vulnerable in a way he hadn't seen before. Then she smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that lit up her face. You have a way of surprising me, Aaron. Before he could respond, the ground beneath them trembled, and the air grew heavy with a sense of foreboding. Lilith's expression turned serious, and she grabbed his hand. We need to leave. Now. Out of doors, she whispered. She pulled him around. What's happening? Aaron asked, panic creeping into his voice. The realm is reacting to something, she said, her voice tense. It's not safe here. Hold on to me. Aaron obeyed, clutching her hand tightly as she began to chant in a language he couldn't understand. The world around them seemed to ripple and distort, and he felt the now familiar sensation of being pulled through a tunnel of light and sound. When they emerged, they were back in his apartment, the air still charged with residual energy. Lilith released his hand and took a step back, her expression unreadable. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I shouldn't have brought you there. Aaron shook his head. Don't apologize. I wanted to see your world, and I'm glad I did. She looked at him, her golden eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and sorrow. You are unlike anyone I've ever met, Aaron, but my realm is dangerous for humans. I cannot risk losing you. His heart ached at the sincerity in her voice. You won't lose me, he said firmly. I'm not going anywhere. Lilith's lips curved into a small smile, though her eyes remained somber. You say that now, but there is much you do not know. Aaron stepped closer, his determination unwavering. Then tell me. Help me understand. For a long moment they stood in silence, the air between them charged with unspoken emotion. Finally, Lilith nodded. Very well, but you must promise me one thing. Anything, Aaron said without hesitation. The rock locked in. She reached out and placed a hand on his cheek, her touch warm and gentle. Promise me that no matter what happens, you will not lose yourself. He covered her hand with his own, meeting her gaze with unwavering resolve. I promise. And in that moment, Aaron knew that his journey with Lilith was far from over. Together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead, bound by a connection that defied the boundaries of their worlds. Aaron's promise to Lilith lingered in his mind like a thread binding him to a destiny he had not fully anticipated. The days following their return from her realm were marked by an unspoken tension. Lilith remained elusive, visiting him only briefly and speaking in cryptic tones that betrayed her concern. Aaron, however, was determined to prove his resolve. He spent his time writing, each word an anchor to the extraordinary connection he shared with her. The stories he created were no longer just tales of far-off lands, but reflections of his experiences and feelings, a fusion of his world and hers. One evening, as Aaron sat at his desk, the familiar chill swept through the room, signaling her arrival. He turned to see Lilith standing near the window, her crimson hair glowing softly in the moonlight. This time she wore a more somber expression, her golden eyes shadowed with an emotion he couldn't quite place. Glimmering along the lines of life. "Lilith," he said, rising to greet her. "I was hoping you'd come." She smiled faintly, though the sadness lingered. "I had to. There are things we need to discuss." Aaron gestured for her to sit, but she remained standing, her gaze fixed on him. He could feel the weight of her thoughts pressing against the air between them. Edith is poised. "What's wrong?" he asked, concern etching his features. "Was it about your realm?" Lilith nodded slowly. "My realm is restless, Aaron. Our visit, it stirred something. I fear it's tied to you." Aaron frowned, trying to piece together her words. "Tied to me? How?" She stepped closer, her presence commanding yet delicate. "You're not like other humans. I sensed it the moment I met you. Your spirit resonates with my realm in a way I've never encountered before. It's as though you belong to both worlds, and yet to neither." Aaron's chest tightened. "What does that mean? Am I in danger?" "Not just you," Lilith said softly. "My realm is shaped by emotion, by energy. Your presence there created ripples, and those ripples have awakened forces. Well, remember." He took a step closer to her, his resolve unwavering. "Then tell me how I can help. I'm not afraid, Lilith. Whatever this is, we'll face it together." Her eyes softened, and for a moment the guarded walls around her seemed to crumble. "You don't understand what you're saying, Aaron. My world is not one of simple answers. The forces I speak of are ancient and unyielding. They will not be swayed by reason or compassion." Aaron reached out, his hand brushing against hers. "Maybe not, but I believe in you. And I believe in us." Aaron reached out and pressed a kiss to her forehead before lighting a candle and packing their supplies. Lilith's lips parted as if to respond, but no words came. Instead, she closed her eyes and let out a slow breath. When she opened them again, there was a newfound determination in her gaze. "Very well, but if we are to face this, you must be prepared." He nodded. "Tell me what I need to do." Lilith moved to the center of the room, her movements fluid and deliberate. She extended her hands, and the air around her began to shimmer. Aaron watched in awe as a circle of glowing symbols appeared on the floor, their light casting ethereal shadows on the walls. The energy in the room grew palpable, and Aaron felt a strange resonance in his chest, as though the symbols were calling to him. "Step into the circle," Lilith instructed, her voice steady but tinged with an undertone of urgency. Aaron hesitated only briefly before stepping forward. As soon as he crossed the threshold, a surge of warmth enveloped him. The symbols pulsed with light, and he felt an unfamiliar yet comforting sensation, like being wrapped in the essence of the world itself. "What is this?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Binding," Lilith explained. It will protect you from the raw energy of my realm, but more importantly, it will awaken the part of you that resonates with it. Only then can you truly face what lies ahead." Aaron nodded, though his mind swirled with questions. As the light intensified, he felt a deep, primal connection to something vast and ancient. Images flashed through his mind, a kaleidoscope of emotions, memories, and visions that seemed to transcend time and space. He saw glimpses of Lilith's realm, its beauty and chaos interwoven like a living tapestry. He felt the weight of its history, the echoes of countless souls who had shaped and been shaped by it. When the light finally dimmed, Aaron stumbled back, breathless but exhilarated. "That was incredible," he said, his voice tinged with awe. Lilith offered him a small smile. "You handled it well. Most humans would have been overwhelmed." "I'm not most humans," he replied, a hint of pride in his tone. She chuckled softly. "No, you're not." For a moment they stood in silence, the bond between them stronger than ever. Then Lilith's expression grew serious once more. "There's one more thing you must do." Aaron raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "You must make your third wish," she said, her voice steady but laced with an undercurrent of tension. He blinked in surprise. "Why now?" "Because your wish will determine the path we take," she explained. "The forces in my realm are already stirring. Your third wish will either strengthen our chances or tip the balance against us." Aaron hesitated, the weight of her words settling over him. He had thought about his final wish many times, but now, with so much at stake, the decision felt monumental. He looked at Lilith, her eyes filled with both hope and fear, and he knew that his choice would affect more than just himself. Taking a deep breath, he stepped closer to her. "I wish for the strength to protect what matters most, to protect you." Lilith's eyes widened, and for a moment she looked as though she might protest, but then she nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Your wish is granted," she said softly. Baz released her and set off back down the dirt road. The room erupted in light and sound, the symbols on the floor glowing brighter than ever. Aaron felt a surge of energy unlike anything he had ever known, a power that seemed to fuse with his very soul. He could feel the connection to Lilith's realm intensify, the boundaries between their worlds blurring. When the light subsided, he stood taller, his senses sharper, his resolve unshakable. Lilith stepped forward, her expression a mix of awe and gratitude. "You truly are remarkable, Aaron." He smiled, reaching out to take her hand. "We're in this together, Lilith. No matter what comes, we'll face it side by side." She nodded, a faint smile gracing her lips. "Then let's not waste any time. The forces in my realm will not wait, and neither should we." With their bond stronger than ever and their resolve unwavering, Aaron and Lilith prepared to face the challenges ahead. Together they would confront the mysteries of her realm and the forces that sought to disrupt it, bound by a connection that defied the boundaries of their worlds. And as they stood side by side, Aaron couldn't help but feel that this was only the beginning of their journey.